The Canadian Tire National Cycling Series kicked off with the Cobblestone Classic in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alison Sider of Team Kahlua made her mark early with victories in the road race and the Criterium. Next stop, the Canadian Tire International in Toronto. And Kellyanne Way of Team Kahlua took top honors on the road race. In the Criterium, it was a former world champion, Marianne Berglund. To Ottawa for the Canadian Tire Capital Challenge. And Laura Charmeda of California took top honors on the road race and also dominated on the Criterium. From there, it was to the Beauce region of Quebec. And once again, Laura Charmeda was there out in front when it came down to the finish line. But she was also being joined by her body-wise teammate, Marianne Berglund once again. To Halifax for the Canadian Tire Atlantic Classic. Margareta Groen of Groen Transport edges out Alison Sider and Marianne Berglund at the finish line. That was the Criterium. Then on the road, it was Sider and Hawkins, Kahlua teammates, dominating once again. And once again, Marianne Berglund made her mark there as well. So Berglund wears the red jersey as the Criterium overall leader. Maria Hawkins wearing the purple jersey as the overall series leader, and Alison Sider just points behind her teammate. The men's side has been a battle among the three big teams. Evian, led by Czesław Łukasiewicz, formerly of Poland, now living in Canada. The Coors Light team, led by Roberto Gaggioli of Italy. And the Magic Cuts Woolco team, led by Jacques Landry, the Quebec native that is a member of Canada's Olympic team. But teams beware, a new one-man team fresh from the Giro d'Italia is on the scene, Brian Walton. The next stop, Edmonton, on the Canadian Tire National Cycling Series. And the 1992 series is brought to you in part by Canada 125 organization and its partners across the country. CCM, yesterday, today, and forever. And by Coleman, the greatest name in the great outdoors. Edmonton, the site for the Canadian Tire Race of Champions, appropriately in the City of Champions. And hello again, everyone. Gino Retta, nice to have you along with us. Men's Criterium and road race stage coming up in a short period of time, but right now, the women take center stage. And 3 women's titles will be handed out today, as this is the final women's event on the 1992 Canadian Tire National Cycling Series. Of course, the overall Criterium title will be decided momentarily as the women's Criterium gets set to get underway. The overall team title has already been decided. Team Kahlua has wrapped that up. And as Patrick Vanderwill now joins us, as he has throughout this entire series, Patrick, the overall individual title, a race between a pair of Team Kahlua teammates.
Maria Hawkins 1 point ahead of her teammate Alison Sider. You have to wonder what Kahlua's strategy is going to be in this race, because Alison Sider is obviously the favorite, but Maria Hawkins, young up-and-coming rider, they might be very happy to see her take her first big title.
All right, moments from the start of the Strathcona Classic, the women's Criterium. Before we get to that, let's take a look at yesterday's road race stage, the Canadian Tire Race of Champions. And the women traveled for 8 laps at 11 kilometers a lap, a total of 88 Ks. 40 riders begin this race that starts in Harlech Park.
Not a very difficult course. One main difficulty, a rather long climb, but for the rest, it's a sprinter's course.
A relatively flat course, as you say, Patrick, which would indicate some very tight fields throughout a portion of the race, especially in the early going. But approaching 3 laps to go, 33 kilometers from the finish, it's Maria Hawkins and Edie Fisher on a 2-rider break.
Maria Hawkins and Edie Fisher. Hawkins leading the series, and Fisher a good rider to be broken away with. She loves to work alone out front.
And then a couple of minutes later, Alison Sider leading the chase that has now caught our 2 leaders.
Alison Sider trying to pick up where Maria Hawkins' attack left off. Kahlua trying to keep the pace very high in the early going.
A key race for Alison Sider, because this being the final event in the women's 1992 series, Alison Sider is looking for the overall victory because she's right behind her teammate. A new breakaway now forming, Maria Hawkins, Alison Sider, and Marianne Berglund. And Berglund still with an outside shot at the overall 1992 title.
Well, you know, Berglund never willing to do much work at the front, and this shows a couple of minutes later, that break is caught. Marianne Berglund really not willing to get things going.
All right, 2 laps to go now. Shelley McKay, Kellyanne Way are leading the way.
The pack very, very tight. Really not much happening. Kahlua has to get this race organized to hope to get the lead.
2 laps left to go in this women's road race through Harlock Park in Edmonton, Alberta. Now, Maria Hawkins trying the solo breakaway. She's wearing the purple jersey as the overall series leader.
But a few minutes later, Maria Hawkins is caught by the pack led by Arlene Sheevan, last year's Canadian Tire Cup leader. Her first race of the season, and she's doing well, reeling in a breakaway here.
Interesting course, relatively flat. Again, that makes it very difficult for an independent rider to attack on this field. 15 kilometers from the finish line now. Allison Sider and Peggy Moss of the Wheels of Thunder team try a breakaway. They're attacking on a slight uphill, not really what you'd call a massive uphill, but there they are now at the turnaround point in the course.
Race getting into its final stages, and Kahlua really getting to the front, trying to take control.
About a minute 30 later, they're caught once again.
Allison Sider trying to do all the work. Peggy Moss just marking the breakaway, doesn't want things to break up, and you can see that Maria Hawkins is leading that break back.
A very picturesque course through the river valley just outside the city of Edmonton. Allison Sider now looking behind her for some support from one of her teammates, but there really isn't anybody within view. Now, 1 lap left to go. Sue Palmer of Cycle Path of Collingwood, Ontario, with Kellyanne Way out in front with 1 lap left to go.
Kellyanne Way's been out front a lot today. She's really been doing a lot of work controlling the race for Kahlua and her teammates.
Now, interesting, you're talking about Kahlua, Patrick. Kahlua trying to use some team strategy. A number of attacks. First, Sarah Neal on the flats following the big uphill.
As the race gets into its final stages, Kahlua really wants to take control, force the other teams to chase. A number of attacks, they're hoping that one of these will work.
Here's a second attack by Kahlua. Maria Hawkins attacks. She's pursued immediately by Peggy Moss.
And Peggy Moss really staying at the front, not willing to let things get away. Shelley McKay from Pedal Specialized as well, right at the front.
And now another attack by another Kahlua teammate, Allison Sider. And once again, she's marked tightly, this time by Clara Hughes of Specialized Pedal.
You know, Kahlua really is starting to take control of this race. You wonder why they didn't do this earlier. Oh, that plastic bag is bad news for wheels if that gets caught in your derailleur.
Fortunately, it wasn't involved. Now, a 4th Kahlua break. This time, Maria Hawkins is attacking, and again, Sue Yaton of World Team on her back wheel.
Late attacks like this make it really hard for riders like Sue Yaton. They don't have teammates. They have to rely on their own strength.
Down to the finish now. Kahlua controls the front of the field. Marianne Berglund is also there. Kellyanne Way leading out for Allison Sider. Allison Sider, though, is passed by Marianne Berglund. Marianne Berglund still looking very fresh. She's got plenty left. And Marianne Berglund will win the Canadian Tire Race of Champions. 2:19.56 was her time. Allison Sider finished 2nd, Marilyn Wells 3rd, Sue Yaton 4th, and Kim Haverluck finishing 5th. Marianne Berglund takes the gold medal at the Race of Champions. And Marianne Berglund now joins us. Marianne, first of all, congratulations on your road stage victory, and now you're in position once again for the 2nd year in a row to win the overall Canadian Tire Criterium title.
Yeah, that's right. However, like I said, it's coming down to the last race here, so it's going to be a challenge today.
1983, you were the Women's World Road Racing Champion. Didn't have much problem making the transition to Criterium racing.
Well, I always liked the Criterium racing more than the stage racing and the road races, and I choose to focus on that. So it is a transition. However, if you choose to, that's what you want to do and focus on that in your training, then of course you hope that's what we will succeed in.
And Marianne, still an outside shot at the overall title here in the Canadian Tire Series. And as you get set for our final women's event, the Canadian Tire Strathcona Classic, we're going to take a quick break and take a look at the route that you and the rest of the field today will be facing.
Okay.
30 laps at 1.6 kilometers per lap on this circuit for a total of 48 kilometers through the old Strathcona district just outside of Edmonton. Unlike some of our former courses, this is a very long straightaway to the finish line. Marianne Berglund, the event and Criterium leader, wearing the red jersey, battling against Kahlua, led by Maria Hawkins, the series leader. Allison Sider, her teammate, just points behind in the overall standings, and Kellyanne Way, also of Team Kahlua, battling against Berglund. And also someone to watch, Edie Fisher of Specialized Pedal. And we'll pick up this race with 23 laps to go. Kellyanne Way in front, Sue Yaton right behind her, also joined up front with Marilyn Wells.
Seeing Kellyanne Way up front like that, it seems that Kahlua has designated her to be the workhorse for these 2 stages. She did a lot of work out front yesterday in the road race, and she's really been controlling the pace here today.
This is the final event on the series for the women, so there's really a lot of money. Overall, over $200,000 in total prize money available in the 1992 Canadian Tire National Cycling Series. And a lot of it will be handed out to the women after this race.
Well, absolutely, and the Kahlua team really in line to receive a lot of that money. Marianne Berglund controlling the Criterium races, but Kahlua, the road races, the overall standings, they've really been running the show.
When you look at what Kahlua has done this 1992 tour, really they have done very well. This is the first ever team that is fully sponsored by a business on a women's side of things. Now this team has done very, very well. They've had a very successful 1992.
More successful than they might have planned because they came into the season thinking that Allison Sider was really their main competitor, and they've come out of it with a couple of new riders, Kellyanne Way, Maria Hawkins having done very, very well. All three of those girls going to the Olympics. So really very strong performance from the Kahlua team.
This field is still very, very tight. Marilyn Wells also looking to move up the overall standings, riding for Wheels of Thunder International Christian. Right now, she's leading the way going into the turn.
And she's right in front of Sue Yaten. Sue Yaten from the world team, and she's alone here, has no teammates, and it really is very, very difficult for a rider with no teammates because all of the work of controlling a race, getting into breakaways, falls on your own shoulders.
We've spoken a little bit about the Team Kahlua and how successful they've been in 92. Wheels of Thunder has also had a very good season.
See Marilyn Wells up front doing a lot of work. Wheels of Thunder is the International Christian Cycling Club. They're based in the United States, and it's a team of Christian cyclists. They were saying to me last year, you know, people have this image of Christianity as being weak, passive, and they really want to change that.
And certainly they are doing that here. Now, definitely when you say weak and passive, Kahlua is definitely not that. And now look at this. Carter Erdman. In a battle of the Kellyannes, Kellyanne Carter Erdman now joins Kellyanne Way at the front of the pack.
You're mentioning the Battle of the Kellyannes, and we really saw that on the track this year. The individual pursuit, the first year that it's going to be in the Barcelona Games for the women. And Kellyanne Carter Erdman, Kellyanne Way, and Clara Hughes, all three of them really vying for that spot. Carter Erdman taking the year off from road racing to really concentrate on the track. Kellyanne Way won that battle, and she qualifies for the Barcelona Olympics on both the track and the road.
Carter leads the way. Hawkins on her back wheel, then Sider and Yaten. 1 through 4, just like that. We'll take a break and come back to Edmonton with more from the Canadian Tire Strathcona Classic. And welcome back to Edmonton for the Canadian Tire Strathcona Classic. Gino Red along with Patrick Vanderwill to bring you up to date with 20 laps to go. While we were gone, Cinda Maxson in the pits. She is Berglund's only teammate in this race. That is really bad news for Marianne Berglund. She needs the help from her teammate. Meanwhile, 19 laps to go. Allison Sider picks up the first point frame. This puts her in first overall, 1 point ahead of her teammate, Maria Hawkins. With 15 laps to go, Sarah Neal leading the sprint for another point frame. Fisher trying to make her move, and Edie Fisher, riding for Specialized Pedal, will just eke her out with 15 laps to go. She takes the points at the Point Cream Sprint.
But more importantly, Gino, if you look behind them, they've opened up a gap with the pack. They may choose to keep this gap going and form a breakaway, or they might just sink back to the pack. We'll have to see what happens in the next lap.
Of course, we're still very early in this women's criterium, but right now Edie Fisher in the black shorts riding for Specialized Pedal is leading the way. And while this battle for first is going on, the battle for third is led by Kellyanne Carter as she leads the pack.
It's important to note that these two riders in the front, you're mentioning that it's early in the race, but these are two good riders to be out front alone. They both like long individual efforts. We'll have to see if they can work together, put aside their team differences, and go for the common tactic of winning this criterium.
And while they're working out in front, sharing the load, the field that is chasing them right now at this point is approximately 5 seconds behind them.
Not much of a gap, but it's more of a psychological opening because somebody who wants to get across to these three has to bridge across alone, and that's not an easy thing to do at this pace.
Erdman and Berglund are leading the chase, trying to make their move, trying to bridge their way onto our two-rider breakout in front.
Berglund staying near the front so that she doesn't get into any accidents, not taking any chances with this criterium. She's in the lead in the criterium standings, and she doesn't want to give that up.
Edie Fisher really is a great story, Patrick. A really big surprise that she's doing so well.
You know, 36 years old, mother of 2 children and a full-time nurse. Everyone at home who thinks, I'm too old, I'm not in shape, I don't have time. Well, take a look at Edie Fisher. She really makes the time, and she's a national level cyclist with all those commitments, personal and professional.
Edie Fisher overcoming a lot, including a lot of work at home to ride in this race. Meanwhile, Sue Yaton of the World Team is now leading the chase. They're about 10 seconds back.
You know, with a Kahlua rider in the break, nobody from Kahlua is going to help in back to have anyone chase them down. So it's up to individual riders like Marianne Berglund, like Sue Yaton, to try to get it going and close that gap.
Edie Fisher continues to lead Sarah Neal as they come down the very long straightaway, unusual for criterium racing. 14 laps left to go. Edie Fisher peels off, and Sarah Neal shares some of the workload.
We were talking about the great Edie Fisher story. The incredible thing is that at the age of 36 years old, she continues to develop. Last year, she was a good rider. This year, she's even better than she was last year. I hate to think what she can be doing at the age of 40.
Or maybe we'd like to think what she can be doing at the age of 40. You know, just having celebrated Canada's birthday, we'd like to take this opportunity to recognize this very special time. A couple of days ago, we celebrated Canada's birthday, but in reality, since this is our 125th anniversary, the celebrations will carry on throughout the year. And as our Peter Watts found out, the cycling community is celebrating as well.
First of all, what is Canada 125?
Canada 125 is a not-for-profit corporation which was established to help celebrate a remarkable milestone in our history. Our goals are very, very simple. It's to involve all Canadians in the celebration of our 125th anniversary.
Celebrations usually mean parades and fireworks and things like that, but Canada 125 is involved in so many different projects. How did that all come about?
About a year ago, we surveyed thousands of Canadians and we asked them how they would like to celebrate our 125th anniversary. What they told us is that they wanted to celebrate with events that they could be part of. That's what the cycling events are all about too. At this point in time, we are supporting a number of cycling events because cycling is one of the most popular sports in Canada. 8 million Canadians practice the sport of cycling, and in terms of popularity, that makes it the most popular sport among Canadians over the age of 10. Biking is not only a great sport, but it's a great exercise as well. And it's a very good way for Canadians to find a way of participating in the Canada 125 celebrations. We're trying to have something for everyone, the recreational bikers as well as the top world racers. We have a number of events which cover the whole spectrum.
Certainly sounds like you've got something for everybody.
Well, we invite all Canadians to participate in one way or another, to get out and support their friends or to participate themselves.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure.
Back to racing now. Let's bring you up to date. At 10 laps to go, Edie Fisher trying to, and looks like she will, outsprint Sarah Neal for another 2-point green. Then, with 7 laps to go, Kellyanne Carter joins Fisher and Neal. Laurel Baig does not to be confused. There are now 3 riders who are up front in this 3-rider break. The 4th rider in the rear of your screen is actually Laurel Baig. She is a lapped rider. And Carter has completed a very, very difficult task. She is riding alone. She has bridged that gap all on her own.
And now a little later on in that lap, you can see that Sarah Neal is still on the front, controlling things. Carter Erdman staying near the front as well. It's going to be interesting to watch these 3 riders come into the final laps because they are all 3 very strong individual riders.
Meanwhile, the pack is about 12 seconds behind them, heading into the turn, and a rider goes down. Shelley McKay goes down, and quite a collision.
And an interesting thing to note there was that Cinda Maxon also went down as well, so Berglund is now without teammates in this race.
On 5 laps to go, another sprint for a pair of points. And those points are so important. We mentioned that before. This time, Edie Fisher drops off, and Sarah Neal will take the 2 points in this sprint preem.
Very important, those points, because Sarah Neal, Edie Fisher, they're fighting for top spots in the series.
Okay, now we're fully caught up. 2 laps to go. Neal, Fisher, and Kellyanne Carter. 1, 2, 3, a 3-rider break with 2 laps left to go.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about this break is we don't have any sprinters. We've got good all-around riders, but no outright sprinters, so it's going to be tough to call. But the interesting thing is Edie Fisher and Sarah Neal are both in almost exactly the same position as far as the series go. If a sprint comes down to between these 2 riders, it'll be for 3rd spot overall in the series.
It really will vault them. There's not much doubt about the fact that the 1st place title is in the hands of Maria Hawkins and Allison Sider. But as you mentioned, Patrick, this could vault one of these 2 riders all the way from 9th all the way up to 3rd overall, which would be a big jump. Riding for 4th place, the pack now. Berglund won't win the overall title, but she may win the Criterium title, and that's what she's battling for in this race.
Look at the 3 riders working together very well. All 3 have an interest in seeing this breakaway go all the way. Carter Erdman, riding very strongly, has missed all of the series to concentrate on the track. She's trying to do well here. And we mentioned the other 2 battling for 3rd spot in the series.
Marianne Berglund, 1, 2, 3, the 3rd rider in, wearing the red jersey. Marianne Berglund at this point has given up the fact that she will not win this Criterium race. However, if she can just stay on her bike, she'll win the Criterium series.
Well, you know, seeing this breakaway go up the road is kind of bittersweet for Marianne Berglund. It means she won't win the Criterium, but it does mean that Allison Sider won't win. And for Allison Sider to move ahead of her in the Criterium standings, she would have to win. So Allison Sider in a bad position now. She can't chase down her teammate Sarah Neal, and she's seeing the Criterium Series Championship just go down the drain.
So Allison Sider, at this point, it looks like will have to settle with the fact that her Kahlua team will win the overall team title. That Allison Sider will battle Maria Hawkins for the individual overall title. And Marianne Berglund, who's presently 3rd in this group of chase riders, will probably take the Criterium series.
Well, you know, just to mention the Kahlua dominance of this series, if Sarah Neal manages to win the final sprint, if this breakaway stays away, then Sarah Neal will move into 3rd spot, and that assures the 3 top spots for the Kahlua team. So it just goes to show how they've really put their stamp on this series.
Also shows what a great tight series we've had, because a lot is coming down to this final event on the women's tour. Now, 1 lap left to go. These 3 riders are battling for the victory in this race, and right now it's being led by Specialized pedal rider Edie Fisher. And we talked about a great story about Edie Fisher, also Sarah Neal, a great story.
Well, Sarah Neal retiring from cycling a couple of years ago, and the next year they diagnosed ovarian cancer, removed the tumor, and now she's back cycling. She has some things to prove. She's trying to show her class of grade school kids back in Vancouver that she can still ride, and even with cancer, fight back and be one of the nation's best.
And right now, she's riding in 2nd spot behind Kellyanne Carter. Kellyanne Carter, purple jersey, leading the way. Sarah Neal, the Kahlua jersey, right behind her. And here is the chase. The chase is so far back at this point, Patrick, they're battling for 4th spot and nothing else.
Well, you know, the top 3 spots are decided, and looking at the sprint between these 3 riders, you have to give the edge to a battle between Sarah Neal and Edie Fisher. Kellyanne Carter Erdman, she's been on the track all season. She's given up her sprint in favor of long endurance efforts for the pursuit, and I don't think she'll be suited for this final sprint.
This is the final event for the women on the 1992 Canadian Tire National Cycling Series. A lot of money on the line. 3 titles on the line. Carter leading the way. Sarah Neal, Team Kahlua, 2nd spot at this point. Specialized pedals, Edie Fisher in 3rd spot at this point. It will be a 3-rider sprint. There is not much doubt about that.
Edie Fisher in very good position here. You know that Sarah Neal is the sprinter to watch out for her. So being behind the main opponent, you're in good position coming into that final sprint.
The Strathcona Classic can do a lot for these women, can vault one of our top 2 riders from 9th overall all the way to 3rd overall in the series. Our leaders have now made the final turn. They are on the straightaway heading towards the finish line. Again, a very long straightaway as they head towards the finish. Carter, Neal, and Fisher. 1, 2, 3. Who'll attack first? It's Carter. Carter attacks, Neal goes with her, and of course, Fisher is right there as well. Sarah Neal in the gold helmet riding for Team Kahlua leading the way. But Specialized Pedals Edie Fisher making her move. And Edie Fisher still got lots left at the finish. Edie Fisher will win the Canadian Tire Strathcona Classic. And Fisher did it with a time of 1:05.25. Kellyanne Carter second, Sarah Neal third, Kahlua's Allison Sider fourth, and Marianne Berglund finishing in 5th spot. It's the final event of the Women's Series this year, and Edie Fisher takes gold at that event. A great way to cap off the series for Fisher. And with this result, Edie Fisher finishes first on the weekend event here in Edmonton at the Race of Champions. Kellyanne Carter second, Sarah Neal finishes in 3rd spot. And with that, the 1992 Canadian Tire Women's Series in the books, and Marianne Berglund is our overall Criterium champion. Allison Sider finishes 2nd, Fisher 3rd, Neal 4th, and Sue Yaton finishing in 5th spot. And as far as the overall series title, that goes to this young woman spraying the champagne. Allison Sider of Team Kahlua takes top honors in the 92 series. Her teammate Maria Hawkins finishes in 2nd spot. And with that result, Team Kahlua takes top team honors on the 1992 Canadian Tire National Cycling Series as the women have wrapped things up. Kahlua finishing first, Specialized Pedal a distance second, International Christian finishing 3rd, and Ottawa Bicycle Club in 4th spot. Next up, we'll turn our attention to the men. The men's Criterium and road race coming up next as the Canadian Tire Race of Champions continues. Edmonton, the city of champions, this week hosting the Race of Champions on the 1992 Canadian Tire National Cycling Series. Welcome back, everyone. Gino right along with Patrick Vanderwell, moments away from the start of the men's Criterium this week, the Canadian Tire Strathcona Classic. And Patrick, as we go into the race, let's talk a little bit about Roberto Gaggioli, the gentleman who leads the overall Criterium standings.
Well, he's been sprinting so consistently. Really, in North America, he's turned into the Criterium rider par excellence. He's got a good chance to wrap up the Criterium overall lead. Against the opposition that we can see here today, he's going to have a tough job.
And of course, going to this race, the overall series leader is Czesław Vukosevic wearing the purple jersey. It'll be interesting to see how he does on this course, relatively flat Criterium course. All right, before we get to our men's Criterium, let's take a look back at yesterday's men's road stage, the Canadian Tire Race of Champions. 15 laps for a total of 160 kilometers. The race begins and finishes in Harlock Park, and 87 riders begin this race.
Like we said in the women's race, not a very tough course, but the rider to watch, certainly Brian Walton, one of the top riders on the world scene, let alone the Canadian scene.
And now here's a brief recap of what happened in this race. Near the end of the first lap, Scott Price of Calgary, riding for Cyclemeister, was on a solo break.
Scott coming back from a hamstring injury, testing out his legs here.
About 16 minutes later, almost a full lap later, he is caught by Chris Westwood wearing the red helmet and Kevin Wharton riding for Magic Cuts Wilco.
Chris Westwood riding very well here, alone on his team. Kevin Wharton riding the team game, trying to set up his Magic Cuts Wilco teammates.
7 minutes later, a former junior rider, Steve Rover, a former national junior champion in 1991 from Montreal, leads the way.
And he's right in front of another former junior rider, Adam Ruppel from Magic Cuts Wilco, riding very well here.
And these junior riders get a good view of Gord Fraser, who attacks.
Look at Gord Fraser, perfect style on the bike, one of Canada's best sprinters and really a good potential for the future.
And a minute later, Gord Fraser, who was out in front, is joined by Coors Light's Dave Mann.
Dave Mann, a British professional, led the prestigious Tour DuPont for a few stages. Very, very strong rider.
The leader of our series, Czesław Vukosevic, right there in the back of the pack. He is well back with 12 laps left to go. He has an awful lot of ground to make up, but this group is trying to chase down our leaders. And then just one lap later, they do exactly that. 11 laps to go. Brian Walton leading the pack, catches Mann and Fraser. And as soon as they've caught them, Colin Davidson of Evian making his move on the left, trying a solo break, but he does not get away.
Walton moving to the front to really start to assume control of this race, and he has here with 7 laps to go. He's formed a breakaway. Roberto Gaggioli from Coors Light on his wheel, and just with them, Kenny Adams from the Spago team.
A 3-man break has been formed with 7 laps to go. By 5 laps to go, Kenny Adams taking a bit of a break, sitting up amongst our leaders out in front. Also there, Brian Walton. He's told me he had a bit of jet lag, but looking good here. And Roberto Gaggioli also there. 5 to go, a 2-minute lead.
3 laps to go. Dave Mann breaks out of the pack. He's chasing alone, and you can see Kenny Adams on the right getting passed by Dave Mann. Kenny Adams, a Criterium rider. He's had enough of this road race.
Walton and Gaggioli all alone in front, a substantial lead. Gaggioli the sprinter, Brian Walton definitely not known for his sprinting abilities. He's got his work cut out for him.
1 minute later, Dave Mann being passed by the pack, led by Czesław Vukosevic. Vukosevic working very hard to reassume control of this race.
1 lap left to go. Roberto Gaggioli right on Brian Walton's back wheel.
Roberto Gaggioli, the sprinter, trying to size up Walton for this final sprint. And now just 34 seconds back, Matt Anand of the Cyclemeisters trying to reel these two in, try to get to the front of this race.
Tough job to do it alone. Now, at the feed station, our leaders making their way on this tough uphill climb.
Last difficulty in this course. If Brian Walton's going to take control, this is where he's going to do it.
Our leaders now, 5 minutes later. A close look at Brian Walton. He's still got a lot of work ahead of him, and he knows his biggest job is trying to beat Gaggioli on that sprint. He's going to have to try to shed him before they get to the final sprint.
Now back to the pack. Colin Davidson leading it. Matt Anand has been caught, and they are really starting to close in on the leaders. It's going to be tough to see whether or not they can catch them before the finish.
Entering Harlock Park for the final time now, coming to the final sprint. Brian Walton leading the way, Roberto Gaggioli on his back wheel, and Gaggioli makes his move. And boy, has he got a lot left. Roberto Gaggioli down the final sprint in Harlock Park in Edmonton. Roberto Gaggioli looks back and he realizes he will win the Canadian Tire Race of Champions with Brian Walton a fraction of a second behind. Now Scott McKinley charging 5 seconds back. Scott McKinley wins the sprint. For third spot, Tim Lefebvre on his back wheel. Roberto Gaggioli wins it, Brian Walton second, Scott McKinley in third, Tim Lefebvre fourth, and Czesław Vukosevic finishing fifth. It took just under 4 hours to win it, but Roberto Gaggioli has won the Canadian Tire Race of Champions. And now joining us, the fifth-place finisher in the race of champions, Czesław Vukocevic. And more importantly, Czesław, you're still wearing the purple jersey, but it's a really tight race. There's about 10 riders that could win the overall title.
I know that, but yesterday I got fifth, and today is just great. And I think that the most important race will be in White Rock. And I think that in this course, the best guy wins and will be the leader overall.
Okay, Czesław, good luck to you today.
Thank you very much.
Canadian Tire Strathcona Classic. And as Czesław makes his way to the starting line, let's take a look at the route our riders will be facing today. 40 laps of this 1.5 kilometer course for a total of 65 kilometers. And once again, White Avenue represents a very long straightaway down to the start-finish line. Makes for a good sprint finish. Roberto Gaggioli of Coors Light wearing the red event leaders jersey. Alex Stida, some family ties here in the city of Edmonton. Czesław Vukocevic racing for Evian, as is Cullen Davidson, the hometown boy from Edmonton. Jacques Landry from Magic Cuts Wilco, and his teammate, the good sprinter, Gord Fraser. Brian Walton of Motorola, all on his own in this race. We'll pick up the race, approaching 34 laps to go. Scott McKinley of Spago on the solo break.
Scott McKinley working very well out front. He was really a breakthrough rider 4 years ago when he won the 1988 Olympic trials in the United States at the age of 19. He was promptly branded the next Greg LeMond, and as everyone knows, that's the death knell for any cyclist. Didn't produce his results after that.
McKinley makes his home in Encino, California, and as you say, did not quite pan out to what they had hoped. However, he did do very well at the Tour de Pont that just wrapped up in the U.S. recently.
Well, came second in one stage and really was riding very aggressively, participating in a lot of breakaways, a lot of solo breakaways as well. He's a very strong rider, there's no doubt about it. Ran into some bad luck in his early years with 7-Eleven and Motorola, and now it looks like he's back. He's riding very well.
Now, credit to Scott McKinley. He has not had a lot of team support on this Canadian Tire Series. Matter of fact, a couple of the events, he was all on his own, but he has done very well considering that fact.
Here you can see the chase group coming up, led by Kevin Wharton. The interesting thing for Scott McKinley here is whether or not the chase group contains riders who want to work. If it does, then he can hope to stay away. If it doesn't, then he'll be back in the pack before you know it.
Another interesting factor is the fact that none of his teammates are in that